my dear students, welcome back to the channel. So today we are going to just look at the pattern of the question paper, like the weightage of the marks, and also I am going to teach you about assertion reasoning based question, which most of the students had requested me to put video on. So let's get into the video. Okay, so you know question paper has two parts, part 1 and part 2 and part 3. Part 2 and part 3 you have internal choices. In part 1 it is a compulsory section. So in part 1 you have to study two chapters. One is share capital chapter, one more is partnership chapter. In partnership chapter you have 4 units to be studied. In share capital chapter it is one big chapter which is combined together related to all types of entries. Okay, so now if you see about part 1, it's divided into 3 sections, section A, B, C. So in that, if you focus on share capital chapter, in section A you will have 7 questions related to the share capital. In section B you will have 8 questions. In section C you will have 2 questions. So overall you will be getting 17 questions from that chapter, which carries 0.88 marks each. That means you will be getting 14.96, approximately 15 marks from the same chapter, share capital. So I thought let us first finish the revision related to the share capital and then proceed to the partnership. Since we have 4 units, one by one in detail we will cover. Okay, so we will start the questions related to the share capital. Okay, in 1 or 2 videos we will be able to cover assertion reasoning based questions. After that we will move to case study based questions. So whichever you feel difficult, let us do that first. Assertion reasoning you may feel difficult, case study you may feel difficult, and the direct questions will be given in section A. So the difficulty level will be higher in the next sections. Okay, so first let's get into assertion reasoning based question. What is the meaning of assertion? What is the meaning of reasoning? Let us understand that first before proceeding to the question. What is assertion? The sky is blue in color. The ocean is in sea green. These all are facts, the truth, right? So that is assertion. Creating an assertion statement means you are talking about something which is a truth or fact that can never be a lie. Okay? What is reasoning is, I came to the school late because it was raining. Both are actually fact. Reasoning is a correct explanation. A student went late to the school because it was raining. That because of this only this is like this. So reasoning should be correct, explaining the truth or the fact. Reasoning should also be the fact, but it should explain the actual fact of assertion. So that's reasoning. Okay. So in this it's fact, in this the reason which explains the fact. So let's get into the question. Okay, so the first question is, see, for all the questions which we are going to discuss, there can be possible 4 options. One is assertion and reasoning, both are right, and reasoning is the correct explanation. The second option will be assertion, reasoning, both are correct, but reasoning is not the correct explanation. Then assertion may be correct, reason may be incorrect, both may be incorrect. So these are the possibilities. Okay, so let us discuss the question, and which is the answer we'll directly discuss. Okay, so let's get into the question. Question number 1. Okay, so in the first question, a company is an artificial person created under the provisions of the Act, provisions of the law, and has a separate legal entity with perpetual succession. A company is an artificial person. Yes, it is an artificial person because it can enter into contracts, it can sue against someone, someone can sue against the company. So that's why it's an artificial person. Yes, it's true. Created under the provisions of the law. Joint stock company has to be compulsorily registered as per the Companies Act 2013 or any other previous acts. So it follows the provisions of the law, and it has separate legal entity with perpetual succession. What is separate legal entity is, it can have its own assets and liabilities in its own name, and it has separate existence from its shareholders. Then it has perpetual succession. No matter what happens to the shareholder, it will continue to exist. So that's perpetual succession. So now, yeah, all of these are truth. Yes, the joint stock company is like this. What is reasoning given? A company is a legal entity, yes, run by law, set up by a group of individuals called promoters, yes. The joint stock company is started by the promoters. Under the provisions of the Companies Act, true. It can own properties in its name, can be sued and get sued. Death, lunacy, bankruptcy of any shareholder doesn't affect the continuation thereof. So all the explanation which I told you now when I was explaining assertion is given in reasoning. The reasoning, because of this company is called like this. So both are true and the reason is actually explaining the assertion. So a option which has assertion, reasoning both are true and reasoning is the correct explanation of assertion. That will be the correct answer. Okay. So now we'll go to the second question. Okay, so before we proceed to the second question, I want to clarify you with one conceptual understanding in the second question. We have something called as liability. What is liability is the liabilities are the debts which we owe to pay to others. We are supposed to pay to others. So in this case, we have two types of companies. One is unlimited liability company and one more is limited liability company. So far, wherever you have heard, the maximum which you would have heard is joint stock company has limited liability. Yes, that's truth. Joint stock company has limited liability. So what is limited liability is, suppose for example, X is investing in the company shares. On 1000 shares he is investing. Each share is costing him rupees 10. So now overall he would have invested 10,000. Now whenever there is a debt arising in the joint stock company, X will contribute his investment of 10,000 for the payment of debts, not more than that. Only to the extent of his investment he will be contributing for the debts, payment of debts. In case, if in this share, 10 rupee worth of share, if he has paid 3 rupees and if he has paid 2 rupees and remaining 5 rupees is still due. He hasn't paid still, but it is his share value. So this is still unpaid. So whenever the company has debts, the company has the legal right to claim 10,000 from Z. Even though he has paid the first 5 rupees, the company can claim back the remaining 5 rupees as well from Z. So this is to the extent of unpaid share value. So debts, X is liable to contribute to the debts only to the extent of 10,000 in which his investment is in. What is this unlimited liability company? If same X is investing in 10,000 share capital. Okay, suppose if I am X, if I have invested in 1000 shares which is of 10,000, the company has a legal right to claim more than 10,000 from me. So that is unlimited liability. I have to sell my personal assets, my personal car, home to pay back the company's debts. So that's unlimited liability. In this, it's limited only to the extent of investment. This is unlimited. Can a joint stock company have unlimited liability? Yes, it can have unlimited liability when it is before incorporation. Before incorporation, it can have unlimited liability, or in a situation in a US Canadian company, they have created this unlimited liability company. So in these two situations, the company, joint stock company, can have unlimited liability. Now in this case, what is the assertion given is, unlike in the case of partnership, liability of the shareholder of the company with unlimited liability is limited to the extent of shares owned by him. They are telling, in unlimited liability company, shareholder will contribute only to the extent of 10,000, not more than 10,000, which is not true. He will have to contribute more than 10,000 if needed. So assertion is false. Then, reasoning what they have told, liability of a member, shareholder, is limited to the shares subscribed by him in case of companies with limited liability. In case of limited liability company, if a shareholder is investing, he is limited up to the investment. Whatever he is investing, to that extent only he is liable to pay the debts. That's what is told in the reasoning. Now, assertion is wrong. Reasoning is right, but reasoning is not correctly explaining the assertion, right? The relationship is not there. So only reasoning is true. So assertion is incorrect, reasoning is correct. That will be the correct option. Okay? Then we'll move to the next question of it. Now there is Mr. X who is investing in a joint stock company. He has invested for around 1 lakh. Suddenly this person goes mad, or suddenly this person dies. Something happens to him. In the will, he would have written that Mr. X's son may get his 1 lakh investment. Means like how we transfer the properties to our next generations, like that shares will also be transferred as per the law. The legal representatives of that person can take the shares. Okay, so this is true. Now we'll go to third question. There is an assertion telling a feature of the company is that it has perpetual succession. Death, lunacy means if a person goes mad, or bankruptcy means if a person is not able to pay back his debts on time, he don't have enough money to pay his debts, then he'll be called bankrupt. Of a shareholder doesn't affect its existence. It continues to exist. Yes, anything happens to a shareholder, nothing will happen to the company will keep running. Then the reasoning told us shares held in the company are transferable, complying with the provisions of the law. Something happens to the shareholder. If he goes mad, bankrupt, or anything happens to him, shares can be transferred with the provisions of the law. Yes, it can be transferred. Reasoning is also true. Assertion is also true. Since it has perpetual succession, anything happens to the shareholder, it continues to exist. Reasoning is right, assertion is also right, and reasoning is the correct explanation of assertion. Okay, in the fourth question, before we proceed, I'll explain one concept and then we will analyze. See, in a joint stock company, we have 3 types of companies, that is private joint stock company, public joint stock company, and we have one person company. One person company is only one person can start a joint stock company. Here minimum will be 1 people, maximum also will be only 1. In case of public company, if you are going to start a public company, what is a public company is, you can raise the investment, money from the general public by issuing them shares. So that's a public company. So the minimum number in this is supposed to be 7. If you are forming a public company, it is supposed to be 7. And the maximum, if you ask, it can be any general public, so it will be unlimited. In case of private company, the minimum number is 2. Just like partnership, the minimum number is 2. The maximum number is 200. A private joint stock company can have only to the extent of 200 members. So this is the minimum and maximum limit for all of these types. If any question comes under this, please be careful. Keep it in your mind. Okay. So in the fourth question, the assertion is a company, whether public or private, can have any number of shareholders. That's not possible. Public company can have any number of shareholders, but private company is limited only up to 200 shareholders. So assertion is wrong. Then reasoning tells a public limited company can have any number of shareholders. True. But a private company can have a maximum of 100 shareholders, including its past and present employees. It tells a private company can have 100 shareholders. It's false, no? It can have 200, a maximum of 200 shareholders. So reasoning is also wrong. Assertion is wrong, reasoning is also wrong. So whichever has both as incorrect will be the correct answer. We'll go to the fifth question. Fifth question is also related to the number. A public company, the assertion tells, a public company must have at least 7 members and maximum can be any number of shareholders. True. We know it's a true. Then reasoning tells, a private company must have at least 2 members and maximum 200 members, excluding its past and present employees. Yes, it's true. You know minimum is 2 and maximum is 200. 7 in the public company and unlimited in the public company. Both are true, but then is reasoning explaining the assertion? Assertion is only complete other fact. Reasoning only is a complete other fact. Both are not related to each other. Reasoning is not correctly explaining the assertion. Okay, so both are correct, but it's not the correct explanation of assertion. Then, so the next question is, like as usual, before we proceed, I'll give you the conceptual understanding. Sixth question is, we are talking about the preference shareholder and the equity shareholder. Now, what is a preference shareholder is, if you are a preference shareholder in a joint stock company, first preference will be given to you in the payment of dividend. What is dividend is, on your investment, profits will be divided among the several shareholders and it will be given to you. Your portion of dividend will be given to you. A fixed rate of dividend will be given. The returns on your investment is dividend. Okay? So in this, a fixed rate will be given to you. Also, when the company is closing, you will be receiving your claims. Like for example, if you have invested 1 lakh, you will be getting that 1 lakh before this equity shareholder. So if you are a preference shareholder, you will have some privileges and preferential rights in the company. What is an equity shareholder? They are the actual owners. If they are the owners, they need to take high risks and they will have higher dividends. In case of huge profits, if you are a preference shareholder, you will be receiving a fixed amount. But if I am an equity shareholder, I will have huge dividends. In case of loss, I will be facing the loss, you will not be facing any loss. Maybe dividend is not paid to you, but you will not face the loss. I will have to face the loss because I am the actual owner. I am an equity shareholder. So that's the difference between preference shareholder and the equity shareholder. Now we'll go to the question. In sixth question, they tell, assertion, preference shareholder have the right to receive the dividend. Yes, it's true. Then, if it is paid to the equity shareholders and also in the event of companies winding up, right to receive repayment of capital before it is paid to equity shareholders. As I told, dividend and the repayment of the investment will be first given to the preference shareholder. It's true. Then, we'll see whether reasoning is defining the assertion, is explaining the assertion. The Companies Act 2013 defines preference shares to be the shares which has preferential right to receive the dividend and also the repayment of capital if the company is wound up, means if the company is closing. Yes, according to the Act, it also tells that the preference shareholder has to receive the dividend and the repayment of capital. So both are right and the assertion is also explaining. Yes, the Act also explains this. It is explaining about the assertion. So both are right and it is a correct explanation. Next question, Oktini. Okay, in the seventh question, the assertion is non-cumulative preference shares are the shares on which dividend, if not paid in 1 year, is not carried forward and paid in the subsequent years. Non-convertible preference shares are the shares which are not converted into shares or new debentures. For this, you should understand the types of preference shares. If you are a preference shareholder, you can invest in many types of preference shares. The overall types of shareholders in a company will be preference shareholder and equity shareholder. We have various varieties of preference shares. So under that, we have convertible preference shares and we have non-convertible preference shares. Then we have non-cumulative and cumulative preference shares. We have these 4 categories. Now we have redeemable and irredeemable also. Specific to our question, I will explain it. What is convertible preference share? Now you know equity shareholder also has advantage. So you want to be as a preference shareholder for around some 3 years. After 3 years time period, you want to shift your preference shares into equity shares to enjoy various advantages of the equity shares, or you want to convert that into debentures. Who are debenture holders is, debenture holders are the people who give long-term loan to the company. So that those are debentures. Bears a fixed rate of interest irrespective of profit or loss earned by the company. You can convert into these. That's convertible preference shares. Non-convertible preference shares is preference shares will be remaining as preference shares only. You cannot convert that into any equity shares or any debentures. Okay. So now what is non-cumulative preference shares and cumulative preference shares? Now if I am a preference shareholder, I am supposed to get 10,000 dividend. Okay. Now the first year the company is paying me 10,000. In the second year the company is not able to pay me. So I am supposed to get 10,000 which is due still. In the third year the company is earning higher profits. So what will they do is, second year's due and the third year's dividend together the company will pay me 20,000. So that is cumulative preference shares. The dividend starts accumulating together and it is paid off at one stretch when the company has enough profits. What is non-cumulative preference shares? Non-cumulative, in the same example which I told you, in the second year the company is not able to pay. That will not be carried forward for the next year for payment. When the next year the company earns profit, it will be paying only third year's 10,000. That second year's 10,000 which is not paid, you cannot claim back. So that's non-cumulative preference shares. So now I hope you understood the types. So in 7th question you see, assertion tells non-cumulative preference shares are the shares on which dividend if not paid in 1 year is not carried forward and paid in the subsequent years. It's true, no? Dividend of the year which is not paid, it's not paid in the next years. That's true. Then non-convertible preference shares which are not convertible into shares or debentures. You cannot convert this into shares or debentures. Yes, both are right. But is the reasoning explaining the assertion? Both are two different facts. So both are correct, but reasoning is not the correct explanation. Okay? Then we'll go to the next question. Again it's regarding the types of shares. The assertion is equity shares are the shares that bear maximum risk and also get maximum reward. I told you if there is a loss, the equity shareholders will be facing. If there is higher dividend, if there is higher profits, equity shareholders will be enjoying in the form of higher dividends. Yes, that's true. Reasoning given is dividend on equity shares may or may not be paid every year. Unlike dividend on preference shares, it may be paid large amount as dividend. Reserves may be capitalized by issuing bonus equity shares. Also market value may be higher than the purchase price. Yes, dividend is not every year given, but then at the time of huge profits we have higher dividends to be paid, and also existing equity shareholders will get bonus shares. Bonus shares is issued at free of cost. If you are a shareholder holding 1000 shares, I will give you free of cost around 10 shares. Because I have to maintain a good relationship with you so that you don't sell your shares. Your shares market value might increase in the stock exchange. Yes, all of these are the correct reason. So equity shareholders are the people who get maximum reward and who take maximum risk. Okay, so reasoning is correctly explaining the assertion. Both are true and it is correctly explaining. 9th and 10th question, I'll explain what is the meaning of authorized capital, what is the meaning of issued capital, then you will better understand. What is authorized capital? Imagine we are the promoters. Who are the promoters? Who have the idea of starting a joint stock company and puts that into implementation. Okay. So now we as a promoter, in our memorandum of association, means our objectives document, we decide that the maximum capital of our joint stock company is going to be around 50 lakhs. So this is authorized capital. Who decides this? The directors, the promoters who are starting, the acting directors will decide the maximum amount of capital that the company can have. That will be mentioned in its memorandum of association. What is issued capital is, out of this 50 lakh, yes, this can be our maximum capital, but what is your financial requirement now? Out of this we may need only 10 lakh. So for these we will raise the money through shares or through debentures, okay, or through any other form. So this is the maximum amount of capital that a company wants to raise. Out of this, what is our financial requirement? According to that, shares will be offered. The issued capital can also be 50 lakhs. But the issued capital cannot be more than the authorized capital. Always, whatever is authorized, whatever is already decided and mentioned in our document of the company, you cannot issue the shares more than your authorized capital. Okay? So, in the hierarchy, this has the highest position. So, out of this, how much ever is our financial requirement will be issuing to the public. Okay? So, now 2 questions are based on this. So, 9th question tells assertion, authorized share capital is the maximum share capital that the company can issue. True? Yes. Then, authorized share capital is the capital as the maximum amount of share capital authorized to be issued by the memorandum of association. Yeah, authorized capital is the maximum amount of share capital that is mentioned in our document. Which document? Memorandum of association. So both are truth, and also reasoning is explaining the assertion. Yes, it is mentioned in our memorandum of association. That's the maximum limit of capital. It's true. So both are correct. Reasoning is the correct explanation. We'll go to the next question. So in the next question, assertion, issued share capital may be more than or equal to the authorized share capital. Can issued capital be more than authorized? No. Authorized is the maximum limit. Issued capital cannot be more. It can be always less. So assertion is false. Then reasoning tells issued share capital is a part of authorized share capital that can be equal to or lower than the authorized share capital. Issued share capital 10 lakh is a part of 50 lakhs according to our financial requirement. Issued capital can also be equal to authorized capital or lower than the authorized capital. Reasoning is actually true, but then it's not explaining the assertion. Assertion is wrong. It is not explaining. Then reasoning is true. So in this, the option which has reasoning correct and assertion wrong will be the right answer. Yeah, that's it guys. We discussed 10 questions related to assertion and reasoning. Just go through these questions and try to understand the concepts. The questions may appear from theory based or practical based from anywhere. So let us study in depth. So in the next video, I'll meet you with next set of assertion reasoning question, and also if possible, we'll start with the case study questions. Okay, thanks for watching. Please do subscribe, the red button below the video, and also do comment. Whenever you have doubts, please ask in the comment section. I'll be ready to clarify. Okay, bye.